Today, industry analysts say poor infrastructure, corruption, and uncertain regulatory environment are hampering oil and gas development in the African continent. A broad view on happenings on developments in the hydrocarbon industry. Shola Bello, a leading journalist in the Nigerian oil and gas industry, will be joining me to diagnose upstream operations in Africa. Welcome to the Upstream Downstream Africa Focus, a weekly review on operations, projects, policies and politics in the oil and gas industry in the African continent and around the world. On this edition, we will be looking at the upstream level of the industry. I am Chris Paul Utaigbe in Lagos, Nigeria, and I will be taking you on a tour of the subject after this time out. Welcome back. Before our major take on upstream developments, first a look at some of the goings on in the industry, especially in Nigeria. Stakeholders urge federal government to revive real system to curb pipeline vandalism. NAITI begins 2015-2016 audit of oil and gas sector. World oil market closed to balance despite OPEC cuts. No plans to increase petrol price, NNPC. NCDMB set to unveil data on oil industry projects. Orlando returns to profitability, posts 3.5 billion naira profit in 2016. Mupeng blames non-passage of PIB for droughts in oil industry. Federal government promotes local content development in oil sector. Kachuku, the Minister of Petroleum. The federal government says it is committed to promoting local content development in the oil and gas sector. Federal government to revoke licenses for private refineries. Federal government promises incentives to IOCs for building refineries. NNPC defends government stance to work with operators of illegal refineries. Illegal refineries to produce 1,000 barrels of oil daily, says NNPC.
The issues confronting oil and gas companies operating in Africa are many and multifaceted. Delays and project cancellations continue to be the only cautious option available for oil companies as they seek fiscal and regulatory clarity in their respective jurisdictions. However, the oil and gas industry in Africa surprisingly shows substantial growth, with new oil and gas provinces developing at a dramatic pace. With a proven natural gas reserves of 502 trillion cubic feet (TCF), 90% of the continent's annual natural gas production of 6.5 TCF is generated from Nigeria, Libya, Algeria, and Egypt. According to experts, companies will for the most part be relying on their own cash flows to fund their own businesses over this year 2017. This is due to blocks and regions that are yet to come into production. For E&P companies, farm-outs are the second most common form of financing in Africa. Chris Brendenham of PwC Africa Oil and Gas says E&P companies stated that equity funding was more difficult during the course of 2012 and 2013. According to him, it has however started to pick up momentum as investors look to Africa as a good place to invest despite a difficult year in the market. The difference now is that companies are approaching investments with a much more critical view, and this has led to falling investments. In a region where weak infrastructure and uncertain regulatory environments weigh heavily on the economics of oil and gas projects, the change in the global price environment has made investors warier of capital-intensive and technically complex developments in politically sticky frontier markets. Kobusde Hart, an economist with South Africa's NKC, states that investment has continued only in projects that were already close to completion. For him, delays to investment tend to have been concentrated in those projects at an early stage of development that still require significant capital investment. In the light of these issues, it is obvious that for upstream operations in the African hydrocarbon industry to move forward, urgently needed reforms have to be speedily introduced into the industry. In Nigeria, a surge in militant attacks on oil pipelines in the Niger Delta, which led to falls in production of up to 700,000 barrels per day. The problems were further amplified by complex regulations requiring foreign investors to use local companies and staff, which are blamed for driving up the cost of doing business in Nigeria. In Angola, legislation requiring international oil companies to rely on local firms for services and goods, combined with a lack of local capacity and resources, have significantly driven up the cost of doing business. These issues are unlikely to go away anytime soon. This is the oil and gas industry in Africa as it stands today.
Shola Bello is the energy editor of Business Day. Before his current job, he had worked for the Vanguard newspaper as energy correspondent. He said, and I quote, "I used to report news on energy, banking, insurance, foreign news, and politics." You were truly an all-rounder, sir. It's a pleasure to have you, Shola Bello.
Thank you very much.
Yes, let's talk upstream operation. Part of the year report that I read, I'll read a bit of it to you right now. Operators complain of poor infrastructure, corruption, lack of regulatory instruments to drive policy. Yet, Africa remains investors' destination of choice. Well, you have been covering the industry for close to 2 decades now. What is your take on this paradox?
Corruption.
Yes.
It takes two to tango. They are not aiding and abetting corruption. They also will not be coming in the way they are coming in. If you don't see anything to latch on that will make them to have to benefit in a way that the other side, the African countries itself, will be at a disadvantage, they will not be coming. So if they are talking of corruption, I think both sides, corruption, it's on both sides of the divide. So they saw a fertile ground for corruption, they walk into it, and they help to further corrupt that system. On infrastructure, well, I cannot say of other countries, but I know Nigeria, yes, the infrastructure are in the serious state of decadence. They cannot, they are old, they have not been replaced for years because the Nigerian government has failed in paying its own cash call money. So, but good thing, like they have a window now whereby the government has exited the cash call arrangement and the companies can go outside Nigeria to the outside world and borrow money. Okay. From the banks, they will give them loan. And all that they needed is just their asset. They can use the asset they have as guarantee. That is the crude oil they have as guarantee. And the banks will give them the money because they know that the money will always come. So if you are talking of regulatory aspect, well, I don't know what they mean by lack of regulatory aspect. But if they are talking of the PIB, it's unfortunate that the PIB has taken 12 years in the National Assembly, and we are not done yet.
But they just passed the PIGB. What's the difference?
The PIGB is not PIB.
What then is PIGB?
They only succeeded in splitting or decimating NNPC. It is NNPC that one is more particularly about. It is not the real thing, the critical thing that the industry is supposed to is the fiscal regime.
Not the governance.
It's the fiscal regime, and that is where they know the royalty they will pay, the PPT, that is profit tax, petroleum tax they will pay, and other things. The one they will pay on gas, royalty they will pay on gas. So, and that is what forms the basis, the operational basis of any company. That is what makes them to take FID, final investment decision.
Yes.
If that fiscal regime is not properly done, there will be no there will be no FID. So they cannot come in. So they have passed the PIGB or whatever they call it. Remaining the bill for community. You know, the PIB is split into 3 or 4. The one that built with governance, which the Senate had just done, the one that deals with community, and the one that deals with physical. So, but the most critical of it is the physical regime, because it must be acceptable to the operators.
So you are not saying that even that means we are still within the ball of, within the court of the lack of regulatory regime?
When did the lack of regulatory regime comes into place? Because they said PIB.
Yeah.
And the guys are kicking against it. Apart from the physical regime, every other thing has been going on. The only context with PIB is the physical regime. Or the other aspect of it, regulatory, the other areas they have to regulate, the DPR is going about doing its own functions. It's just this thing, this physical regime that has held them back. And of course, where will you, what is production? What is oil and gas when there's no production?
Production.
And this is truly, when they have a clear-cut fiscal regime, that will make them to decide whether they will go into the business or they will drop.
Talking about production, well, we have a proven natural gas reserve of 502 trillion cubic feet. You know,
according to EIA.
According to EIA, with 90% of the continent's annual natural gas production of 6.5 trillion cubic feet coming from Nigeria, Libya, Algeria, and Egypt. At a little of 6%, it is obvious Africa is underexplored. What do you think this means for the economy for the continent and players?
You have said it all. Africa is underexplored. Maybe because, again, because of bad management, bad governance, and
still the regulatory regime.
And pardon?
Still the regulatory regime.
Well, still the regulatory regime, but when did the regulatory regime? I mean, are they not operating is the PIB? Is PIB or the same problem in Libya?
That's true.
I mean, Libya, the Libya issue has to do with the removal of Gaddafi and the crisis there. Egypt is also doing. Angola is doing well. So, and I'm sure Kenya has started. Other African countries have started there, and I'm sure they will not fall to the same pit Nigeria has fallen into. Because I remember that people from Uganda came to Nigeria to come and learn, for Nigeria to teach them how they have been able to pilot their
Nigerian content law.
The industry over the years. So, and I'm sure they have borrowed some things. And our brothers at our back there, even though they always made jest of us, they came to learn from us, the Ghanaians. So what is everybody talking about? We will continue to be underdeveloped. I mean, underexplore our gas until such a time that we also have the resources, what it takes to also do those things in the right way and in the proper way. I hope the IOCs will not exploit us and we don't benefit anything from it.
Well, I know there was a back and forth over gas flaring issues, the law, and all of that. What's the state of that for now?
I think, according to their reports, it has been drastically reduced. 2-3 years ago, they said it has come down to about between 11 and 50%.
Okay.
So I don't know the volume that is being flared now, but I think they have drastically reduced it. And mind you, these days you don't bring out a program, a work program without telling the government, this is how you are going to use the gas. This is what you tend to use the gas, or this is how you are going to avoid gas flaring. So a lot of check and balances have been put in place, and I think the operators are also working towards that. And you know that the government also is anxious on gas utilization. So they are very keen about gas utilization, especially in the power sector. So everybody is trying to see how they can utilize the gas resources they have.
Oh well, now even though they are talking about still on regulatory regime, but I remember that the local content law that was passed into law in 2010 is still very much active in the industry. Is that not enough to help the industry power itself along till PIB really comes up?
No. Local content, you see, local content.
Yes.
That is just an aspect of the industry.
Okay.
So that cannot be used to govern
the entire
industry. Local content has to do with how to aid, how Nigerians can key into the operations of the industry, so that eventually, when the Uyibos decide to say they are going, some Nigerians will have acquired skills, knowledge, and they will have probably taken over seamlessly. So, and that is what the local content law is about. That, okay, you are coming to work here as a foreigner. Who are your Nigerian partners? What is going to be the benefit to Nigerians, to our local economy? Mind you that oil and service company, that is where the money, most of the money goes to.
The oil services company?
Yes, that is where the money goes to. And that is where you find a lot of these foreigners.
Okay.
So, it's the worst capital flight you can ever think about, because that is that area that they carry the money. You go and develop people in Italy, you go and develop their factory in Italy, you keep their factory in America working, you keep their factories in UK working, and yet there's nothing in Nigeria. So they manufacture those things and import them to this place and just come and couple them. So, not to our own benefits.
Well, talking about that, some of the big companies, IOCs and the rest, are complaining that this local content law is driving up costs, because in trying to unskill the locals, they have to spend so much money. It's driving up costs for them. Do you agree with this?
Are they the only one that is going to pay the cost? Is the federal government not partnering with them? After all, whatever cost that is going to be involved, federal government will pay 60%. Right. So why are they complaining? And the same federal government that pays 60% say, look, my people need this knowledge. They need to be skilled in these things. They need to be able to do these things. And they are complaining. You see, I think they are just doing it for their selfish reasons. They are developing their own country. They are doing things in their home country, to the detriment of Nigerians. So, they are even lucky that because we don't have a government that says, can they do that in Saudi?
Saudi Arabia?
Yes. Can they do that in Saudi? Can they do that in another country? It's only in Nigeria that they are able to, that gives them the liberty for them to do most of this nonsense they are doing here. Why would you come and exploit us here? Take our money. Our guys are not employed. Our traders or whatever artisans are not employed. So how does it circulate in the economy? That don't mind you. There has always been this argument that the oil exploitation and production here does not make much impact. There is no link between it and the economy.
Yes. I remember that annually the industry spend on projects is about $20 billion that is spent on projects, which is supposed to actually circulate. If half of that were to circulate in the economy, a lot of employment and all of that. So I'm agreeing with you that indeed they are shortchanging the economy of the country.
Yeah, because the government itself shortchange Nigerians.
How?
If you have a government that have the services to its people at its heart, I think all these things we are talking about wouldn't have even come up at all. Because from day one, they would have said, look, this is what we want, this is what we want, and this is how our people would have been able to develop. But the government have an issue. Allow them. They were the one who are dictating, the oil companies are the one who are dictating whatever they want to do. So it's now that the government is just sitting up, just opening, their eyes are just open. Look, if we don't do this thing, we'll have population explosion because a lot of our people will remain unemployed. Why do we have the problems we have in Niger Delta today? If they have operated in Niger Delta for this long, and maybe train the Niger Delta guys, train them in another thing. Somebody who is working and is earning some salary, good living, good money, will not go and break pipeline now, because he knows that when he breaks that pipeline, he's not going to get a job.
Yeah. So we still remain at the short end of the stick.
Very much.
What's your final thoughts about the industry generally?
My final thought is, the government should do what it's supposed to do. The government have no business in business. Government should be concerned with taxes, royalties, and every other thing that can accrue, that can give it advantage, revenue advantage, and hands off, and allow those who know the job, who know the business, to do the business. But put in very firm regulatory institutions. They should develop the regulatory institutions in such a way that they should be able to resist anything that is
unethical.
And they should stand firm that this is what they want to do. Until we are able to do that, if people continue to cut corners, then we'll begin to run into problems. So I think that's just what I PIB, in all ramifications, should be fast. The fiscal regime should be made clear and should be something that everybody has key into. You don't take undue advantage over the IOCs. The IOCs also should not take undue advantage over us because they feel they have the money, they can muzzle their way through. No, it should be 50-50. Let us give and take, Let us be able to have a very seamless working relationship. And it will be good for everybody.
He said government should do what it should do and be up to its game. It's been Shola Bello with me for the full half hour. Shola, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to have you with me.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
And you too.
The trajectory of the oil and gas world took a different turn when America discovered the shale oil in the early 2010s. It became tougher for most OPEC countries, including Nigeria, when the American government decided to reduce its importation of oil. This affected the economies of most of those oil exporting nations that depend on America to buy their oil. The third factor that has affected the life of the hydrocarbon trade, especially in oil-dependent economies in the African continent, was a plethora of discoveries in the continent. Oil companies now have options as to where to invest their dollars. In other words, to a certain extent, the industry became a buyer's market rather than the other way around, as it was not too long ago. Now, the last but not the least is the dramatic crash in the oil price. Investors are now on the hunt for oil-producing countries with some appreciable level of investment-friendly, regulatory, politically stable, and corruption-free markets in the continent. The onus is thus on these countries to put their house in order if they must get a larger share to power their economies. This means that countries such as Nigeria must be more serious and aggressive in its ongoing war against corruption and speed up the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill, which is the PIB, which is currently in its second reading in the Nigerian Senate, although they have passed the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, the PIGB, which, as you have heard from Shola Bello, does not really capture the entire industry. This is all we can take today on today's episode. Let's make it a date next week, same time, same station. I remain yours, Chris Paul Utaigbe. Bye for now.